So are you stuck? Do you wish you were stuck? If this is your first time watching one of our video series here, my name is Rob. I'm a coding instructor for PreCodeCamp. And in this video, we're going to be going over freeCodeCamp's design a set of colored boxes. And one of the things that makes these videos a little unique compared to the other ones out there, we are going to come at it from an instructor's point of view. You're going to learn a few things. You're going to search documentation as if you were a student taking a class. And that's how we're going to be approaching these types of videos. Let's go ahead and get started. As always, we would love it if you would go ahead and hit that like button because it really helps out that YouTube algorithm and lets us know that we're doing a great job. So thank you for doing that. Now let's go ahead and move on. So as I mentioned, we're utilizing freeCodeCamp's design a set of colored boxes, and what we are going to be designing here, and we'll see based upon the user stories, looks like a simple maybe H1. And then we have some squares with rounded corners on each one of these. And it's going to be probably neat to see. It looks like we might have a class just to give us the square outline, and then we can individualize the colors here. So it looks neat. We'll see how the user stories go. I am going through this for my very first time here as well. And like I said, we're going to go through it. We're going to knock out all these user stories, and then we're going to hit this little test button at the end. And if I make a mistake down the road, we're going to catch it when we do our test, and then we'll come back to it. As always, everything is chaptered down below. So if you are stuck on a certain user story, you can just go ahead and jump right to it. However, you may miss some teaching points in between, so you may not want to do that. Anyways, let's go ahead and get started. We're going to be doing user story number 1 here. All right, user story number 1, and this kind of leads into one of my things that I'm always telling my students to do is, hey, when we are getting ready to add some CSS, let's go ahead and add a background color to our page to make sure that the CSS works. Because there's a lot of times that you will create some elements inside the body here, and you are just going mad crazy by putting in all of these classes and IDs on your style page that you have over here, and they're not working for some reason. And I can't tell you how many times a student was like, hey, I'm putting in all this code, I'm not seeing it, what's going on? And we'll see why here, because freeCodeCamp doesn't really tell you about it until you scroll all the way down at the end. But I wish that they would move that note up here at the very top, because the note that I'm talking about is make sure you link your style sheet to be able to apply your CSS. So anyways, the user story here says that the body, we need to go ahead and target with our CSS. And so if you didn't know, we have an HTML page, we have a styles.css page here, and we can go ahead and attack the body. And we want the background color to be this hex code. Now, I'm not able to read hex code. I don't know what that is, but we'll see what it is once we get it linked. And you can see that we got this little gray, kind of slate gray here on the screen. However, we don't see that color appearing over here in our preview. And that's because we haven't linked our page yet. And if you've been watching a couple of my video series, you know that, hey, let's go ahead and Google some things. And what would I type into Google to find out what do I need to do in order to link the page? And I would put in there W3 schools, how to apply CSS. And this is what you would come up with here. It gives you the 3 ways. But then down here is the way that we want, which is we have a separate page. That's what freeCodeCamp gives us. There's times that I don't commit this to memory, and that's just because that in your IDE that you use, Visual Studio Code, it gives this to you for free by just typing in a few letters. And so I will come over here and I will paste that here. And I do have to modify this because I need this to be styles and not my styles. And then now my little white gray type of background has been applied. So that should satisfy user story number 1 just by linking it, and we can visually see it. All right. So let's go ahead and move on to the next user story, which would be user story number 2. Now, some of these user stories are going to be really quick for us to do. It says that we need to have a div with a class of color grid, and this is going to hold all of our color elements. And where does it want us to put that? And because this is something that's going to be visually seen by us, the user, then we want to put this in the body. And so it just says we want a div here. I'm going to go ahead and close off the divs. As always, I'm telling students, hey, let's go ahead and make sure that we start off with an opening tag. Let's close it off immediately so we don't forget, because I've seen the forums and people will forget to have opening and closing tags when they're going through these modules. I will also make this look a little pretty by indenting it here. As far as the class, I'm going to set that equal to, and then I'm going to put in quotes. And this is what I need to do here, because it says that we need to call it something very specific, because that's what it needs to do in order to pass our tests that we have to do later on. And that right there is going to pass user story number 2. User story number 3, it says that we need to have 5 div elements within the color grid element. What does that mean? In between the 2 tags, the 2 opening and closing tags, I need to have 5 of these divs. And it didn't give us classes quite yet. I don't know if it's going to give us classes for these, but I need to have 5 of these, an open and close. Again, I can't stress how important that is to have these open and closed tags. It will bite you if you don't. I believe that is 5, and that should pass user story number 3. Okay, so user story number 4. This one might be a little complicated with the way that they word things, but don't worry, we're going to get through it. It says that the first 5 div elements, they should all have a class called color box. So let's go ahead and do that. I'm going to go ahead and type in here class, and I'm going to set that equal to color box. And that's what I was talking about earlier, which is maybe we're going to be assigning each one of those little squares the same class name, and the only thing that might be different is their background color. And so this is going to be a real quick way for us to group all these boxes together to have the same property, because each one of these boxes, they're going to have a width, they're going to have a height, they're going to have rounded corners. All of those things are the same, and the only thing that needs to change is maybe another class to tell us what color it is. Now, the second part to this, because we're not finished yet, it says that we need to add another class with the color and supply the number based upon the order that they are in. For example, it says the first div is not only going to have the color box, but we need to also supply a color. So we'll do color 1, okay? Classes, you can have multiple classes on a div for sure. But as far as IDs go, you can only have one ID for things. Okay. All right. And now we just have to apply this type of logic to each one of the divs. All right. This is going to be color 2 and so on. All right. So we have all the colors now. Color 1, color 2, color 3, 4, and 5. And by the way, a little tip here with freeCodeCamp is that if you need some extra space, you can just toggle your style sheet on and off. I decided to toggle it off because we're not doing any styling quite yet. And maybe once we do, then we can bring it back in. All right. So with that being said, this should satisfy user story number 4. All right, user story number 5 with design a set of colored boxes. Here, we're finally getting into the styling aspect of this. And it says that it needs us to target the color box. And that's exactly what I'm saying, is that we're going to target each one of these divs that have a class name of colored box. And when we're adding classes to our style sheet, remember classes, they all start with periods. We didn't have a period on the body because that's an element. This is a class that we're talking about, and we want to target the color box. Now, something that I'm going to do here special, just for some teaching points and things, is I'm going to create an outline. One of the greatest things that sometimes you can do on here, because we're going to be adding a height and a width, and we're not going to be able to see it until maybe we add a background color, for example. But I do want to show you that we could add an outline to this, and it doesn't affect any kind of padding or margin or any kind of spacing whatsoever with any of these elements whenever we add an outline. We can do an outline here, and I'm going to make it 1 pixel solid and then red. And we'll see right now it's like a straight line. And that's because this element, this block element here, these divs, there is nothing on them as far as text, or we haven't defined a width or a height quite yet. And so all of these elements here are block elements. And now we can go ahead and apply, it says a width and a height. So let's do the width. Let's set that to 100 pixels. Okay. Now let's go ahead and set the height. Let's set that to 100 pixels as well. And now we have the squares on here, and they are only allowed to eat up space of 100 pixels wide and 100 pixels in height. And so I'm going to keep on the outline here. Again, it should pass any kind of test if you're running some tests right now, but we're just utilizing this for just some visual purposes until we add some colors to these squares, okay? All right, but that should satisfy user story number 5. So user story number 6, it tells us that it wants us to use hexadecimal color values. And let's go ahead and go over to W3 Schools for documentation real quick, just to refresh our memory on what do hexadecimals do for us and how can I pick some colors out from it. And so if you do a Google search for hexadecimal W3 Schools, you'll come to something like this. And notice that it gets a hashtag on here, and then we have 2, 4, 6 possibilities, and it can range anywhere from the double zeros all the way up to the Fs. Okay. Now, each one of these corresponds to a color of red, green, and blue. So that way you can play around with your mixology of the colors. So if I do go 0, 0, 0, 0, all zeros on here, notice that we get black. And then if we increase all of these here, we get the value of white. You can't even see it. So let's go ahead and do a green one, for example. And so I'm going to turn down all the blue. I'm going to turn down all the red, and we get the green. Now we can decide what kind of shade of green that we can get on here also. So anyways, that looks like a good color for me to use for our very first square. So I'm going to go ahead and grab it. You can pick whatever color you want. It did not specify which one we needed to use. It just says on here that the element should have a background color with the hexadecimal color value, because I believe we're going to be practicing our RGBs and other ones as well. HSLs I see is on there also. So we're going to do the color 1, and then we're going to do the background color, and we want to set that to the hexadecimal that we did there. And notice that our green square got filled in. Perfect. And that should satisfy user story number 6. User story number 7, it says that the element should have a background color that uses RGB color values, and the color 2 is what we need to target. Now, just to reinforce some of our memory from the RGB lesson, that stands for red, green, blue. We get the red value here, we get the green, and then we get the blue. And we can utilize values from 0 all the way to 255, okay? So when we're looking at the RGB calculator here, we're able to slide in these values here for the green, for the red, and for the blue to get us a custom color that you are seeing appear up here. So this kind of looks good right here for what I want to use, a nice little yellow. And now I'm going to apply this to our styling. So over here, it says that we need to target the number 2 color. So let's go ahead and do color 2. And the background color, we are going to use the RGB, and then don't forget the semicolon there. And we can see now that the yellow that we just got done creating here has now been applied to our second square. All right, cool. Let's see what we have to do next on user story number 8. User story number 8, it says that for the color 3 element, let's go ahead and make the background color a predefined word for the color value. All right, let's go ahead and do that. So we're going to do the color 3 curly brackets. And as far as the background color goes for this, let's re-jog our memories on naming, because there's lots of names out there. And again, if you just do W3 Schools color names, you'll see that it comes up with a lot of these, right? I don't know how many there are, haven't counted, but there is one that is special, which is this Rebecca Purple. And there's a story about one of the major pioneers of CSS where Eric, his daughter, ended up unfortunately dying from cancer, and they ended up naming a CSS color for her favorite color. And it was the hashtag of 663399. But now you are able to type in Rebecca Purple and you'll be able to get it. So let's go ahead and go and use that one. So we're going to do the background color, and we're going to set that to Rebecca Purple. And now we have a purple slot there. All right, and that should satisfy user story number 8. All right, user story number 9, it says that on our color 4 element, let's go ahead and change the background color to any color we want, but it needs to utilize HSL, which is hue, saturation, and light. So let's look at the W3 Schools for this, just to refresh our memory of what it all stands for and everything. So we have the hue, saturation, and lightness. And the hue degree can go anywhere from 0 to 360. So they say imagine a color wheel. We also have saturation, where it can go anywhere between 0 and 100%. And then the same thing for the lightness. So it says 100% means full light. And we can see this on the color slider that we have here. We can go the full 360, and then we can go somewhere in between. But then for the saturation, you can see that it dims it, and then the lightness also dims it as well. So you are still able to get all the same amount of colors that you would be from a hex as well as the RGB values. All right. So let's go ahead. I'm going to go ahead and pick another color here, and let's go ahead and utilize something that looks like this, maybe a little lighter. Perfect. That looks great. I'm going to go ahead and copy this and apply it to my design. So I'm going to target the color 4. I'm going to set the background color. We're going to set that to our HSL that we just came up with, and then we're going to do the semicolon. And we can see that we did end up getting that blue here. Perfect. All right, that should satisfy user story number 9. All right, user story number 10. This might be a little confusing with the verbiage that they used. It says that the color 5 element should have a background color set. And that just means, hey, just give it any background color. It doesn't matter what it is. So let's go ahead and accomplish that. So we're going to go ahead and do the color 5 background color. We're going to set that to salmon. And there we go. We have all of our colors, and it looks like it's from the 80. Perfect. But it does look ugly. If you are looking to test things out, you can definitely test things out right now. But we're going to beautify a few things to make it look a little more like how they gave it to us from the example. So let's go ahead and try to beautify a few of these things here. All right, so the first thing that I'm going to target here is the parent container that is holding in all these boxes. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to come up here and I'm going to do color grid. I'm going to target it. And then in here, I'm going to do a display flex, which will shove everything up together into one line. It's almost like it collapses everything. So I'll do a display flex. And then the next thing that I'll do is I'll put a gap in between these. I'll do a gap of 20 pixels. And then I would like it to be able to wrap around. And so I'm going to do flex wrap, and that should give us the nice square effect. It looks like a grid, and it utilizes the full space if it can. Otherwise, it's going to wrap. So now that we have them laid out, let's go ahead and adjust a few more things on the color box here. The first thing that I would like to do is let's do a border radius. Let's set that to 10 pixels. There we go. Now that they are rounded, let's change the outline color to black. And then let's go ahead and give it a nice box shadow here. We're going to do 0 in the X position. We'll do 5 pixels in the Y. We'll do a spread of 10 pixels, and then we'll make sure that it is slate gray. All right, that kind of cleaned those things up. Now it's time for testing. Right, so this is the part where we're going to run these tests, and if there are any mistakes or anything like that, we're going to go ahead and fix them here. So let's go ahead and run this. Fingers crossed that we got everything right. All right, we got everything right, 100% complete, and we don't have to fix anything. That's really good news. All right, super excited that the test worked and we didn't have to redo any of the work. But hopefully you enjoyed this lesson. We did explore the hex code, we did the HSL, we also did the RGB. So that was a real good kind of where we're looking into documentation, showing you how to use that, and then applying it to our task. The only thing that I wish that freeCodeCamp would have done with us is allow us to have a little more styling and walk us through some of that, because it gives us an example, but it really didn't look like that example when we finally got finished with all the user stories. If you enjoyed the video, make sure that you like it, make sure you subscribe to our channel, and leave a comment on any part that you got stuck on, and that way it might help others that are looking for that as well. Okay, we'll see you in the next video. Take care.